He worried all night, trying to call Mu Qianfan multiple times, but his phone was off. When Jean also called twice, but then didn't dare to call again because she had been scolded by him. By the next morning, Mu Qianfan finally called Hiyu himself. Seeing the name Mr. Mu on the caller ID, Hiyu's heart skipped a beat. Unsure if it was Mu Qianfan himself, she answered very cautiously, "Hello." Mu Qianfan's muffled voice came from the other end of the line. "Hiyu?" Confirming it was Mu Qianfan, Hiyu immediately roared her questions. "Where are you? Why didn't you come home last night? Why was your phone off the whole time?" Mu Qianfan was currently lying in a hotel bed. Waking up to find himself not at home, he was startled and quickly looked for his phone, only to find it was off. As a married man who wasn't on a business trip, yet didn't come home for the night, this was definitely not a good thing. Naturally, he had to give her a plausible explanation. Hearing Hughes' questions, he wasn't angry. Instead, he felt very apologetic. "I'm sorry, I drank too much last night. I didn't even realize I didn't come home and that my phone was off." He had a dinner engagement last night and accidentally overdrank. He had no idea what happened afterward, only waking up in a hotel. He called Lin Shujia to find out what had transpired. Hiyu asked suspiciously, "Just too much to drink? Not tricked by the Li family?" Mu Qianfan quickly explained, "It really was just too much to drink. I swear to God, I didn't do anything to betray you. I've always kept your 3 rules in mind." Hearing his explanation, Hiyu suddenly realized they weren't on the same page at all, completely misunderstanding each other. She had never even considered he might have cheated. Not hearing her response, Mu Qianfan grew even more anxious. "I have witnesses. If you don't believe me, you can ask them. They were the ones who brought me into the room last night and turned off my phone." Hearing the urgency in his voice, Hiyu was both annoyed and amused. "I don't disbelieve you. As long as you're okay, that's all that matters. I should get to work now. We can talk about other things later." Hiyu somewhat eagerly hung up the phone and let out a long sigh of relief. Before making the call, she had never imagined this outcome. She just wanted to confirm his safety. His misunderstanding embarrassed her instead. Mu Qianfan held his phone, taking a long moment to collect himself. Hiyu's attitude made him unable to fathom whether she believed him now or was still angry with him. He didn't understand women. All he knew was that a woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. They loved to say one thing and mean another, and a woman's face was like June weather, changing in an instant. Hiyu tidied herself up and went to work, feeling relieved. Even before she entered the company, she heard a commotion inside. They were talking about her disqualification from the competition, a matter that had already hit the news and caused a huge stir. Seeing Hiyu enter, Zhaoting immediately came forward to comfort her. "Hiyu, don't be sad. This must be the doing of those people from Huimei. They just can't stand to lose." As Yang Yi's previous assistant, Zhaoting was initially responsible for mentoring Hiyu. Therefore, they had more contact, and their relationship was naturally better than with most others. Hiyu shook her head. "It's okay, the company will resolve this." Zhaoting was ecstatic. "Really? Director Yang really has some guts, daring to go against those glamorous sluts from Huimei." In truth, it was Mu Qianfan who actually solved the problem this time, but Hiyu didn't explain. She was always a woman of few words and didn't greet anyone else, going straight to the practice room. Once Hiyu had walked away, Liang Huan snorted, wrinkling her nose. "So, what if she's tall? She's not even famous yet, and she's already putting on celebrity airs every day." Liang Huan and Hiyu started at the company at the same time, both as intern assistants for Yang Yi. Later, Hiyu successfully became a full-time employee, while Yang Huan was not selected and was transferred to the design department as a design assistant. Many of the rumors within the company about Hiyu and Yang Yi having an unusual private relationship, or Hiyu using men to climb the ladder, had been spread by her. Zhao Ting disliked Liang Huan very much, not only because of her poor character but also because of her attire. She was the only one in the entire company who dressed provocatively under the guise of being sexy. Hearing Liang Huan's comment, Zhao Ting immediately retorted impolitely. "Is that celebrity airs? She's been like that since she joined the company, hasn't she? Unlike some people who are so obsequious." Liang Huan extended a hand with bright red nail polish towards Zhao Ting. "Who are you calling obsequious? Make yourself clear." Zhao Ting shrugged. "How would I know? Whoever did it knows it. If you want to take it personally, that's your business." Liang Huan was stung by the remark and angrily cursed at Zhao Ting, but it was like punching cotton. Zhao Ting completely ignored her, letting her rant to herself. Chun Minghui, the design department manager, sharply interrupted Liang Huan. "What's all this noise? Don't you have work to do? This is an office, not a marketplace. If you don't want to work, get out." Liang Huan was filled with indignation from being reprimanded. It was clearly Zhao Ting who started the quarrel, yet she was the one being scolded. To make matters worse, Zhao Ting subtly gave her a look that said, serves you right, making her face turn pale with anger. Noon, Dragon Phoenix Restaurant. Mu Qianfan had arranged to have lunch with He Yu and once again explained what happened last night. He Yu, it was my fault for not coming home last night, but please believe me, I truly didn't do anything to betray you. He Yu had thought this chapter was closed, but she hadn't expected Mu Qianfan to still be dwelling on it. Seeing his serious and earnest expression, an indescribable warmth spread through her heart. Was he so concerned about last night because he cared about her and was afraid she would misunderstand? He Yu remained silent, and Mu Qianfan, anxious, immediately raised his right hand and extended 4 fingers. I, Mu Qianfan, swear to God, if I touched any woman last night, may I? Seeing that Mu Qianfan was actually going to swear, He quickly grabbed his hand to stop him. I really don't disbelieve you. From beginning to end, I never thought you would cheat. Mu Qianfan was a little bewildered, not just by her words, but also by her action at that moment. She had actually taken his hand voluntarily. What an honor! The key was that he liked this feeling. He Yu, however, seemed oblivious, holding his hand as she continued to explain. I wasn't angry when I spoke so loudly to you on the phone. I was afraid something had happened to you. I'm sorry, I didn't think of that. What Mu Qianfan truly hadn't expected was how much He Yu cared about his safety. It seemed Wen Jin was right. He Yu genuinely cared about him, otherwise, she wouldn't have fallen into Li Junyi's trap that time. Thinking of Wen Jin, Mu Qianfan added, if you can't reach me next time, you can call Wen Jin. Only then did he realize she was still holding Mu Qianfan's hand. Her face flushed. She quickly let go, lowering her head, not daring to look at him again. Why was she so nervous? Mu Qianfan felt a little disappointed, not because he would let go of him, but because of her flustered expression at that moment. She seemed to regret holding his hand. What exactly was this woman thinking? She clearly cared about him, yet deliberately kept her distance. Was it because she was shy? He said glumly, I called Wen Jin's number, the one I asked Mu Qianfan for, and found there was a wrong digit. No wonder Wen Jin didn't answer when I called. He quickly corrected it. It turned out to be a misunderstanding, and he was extremely embarrassed. Sorry, I saved it wrong myself at the time. At that time, she had just finished soaking in cold water, and the effects of the medicine hadn't completely worn off. Her head was muddled, so it was understandable that she misheard or misdialed the number. Mu Qianfan reached out to He Yu. It's okay. Give me your phone, and I'll give you Lin Xujia's number. He's also my assistant, just like Wen Jin. He Yu gave her phone to Mu Qianfan, letting him save Lin Xujia's number. She believed there wouldn't be any more problems this time. She trusted him to do things reliably, without any blunders. After Mu Qianfan returned the phone to He Yu, he began to eat. Seeing that he was acting as usual and truly wasn't angry, he finally let out a sigh of relief. The matter of staying out all night was considered perfectly resolved. That evening, Mu Qianfan couldn't come home on time again. He called He Yu in advance, saying he might be back a little late, and told her not to wait for him. So, He Yu really didn't wait for Mu Qianfan and prepared to sleep around the usual time. But looking at the empty spot beside her, she always felt something was missing. Initially, she was very unaccustomed to sleeping in the same bed with a strange man, but now, she felt uneasy without him by her side. Without Mu Qianfan, she felt insecure. After a long time of random thoughts, He finally fell asleep. She didn't know how much time had passed, but when she was drowsy, she suddenly felt something heavy pressing down on her. He woke up with a start, then smelled a strong scent of alcohol. It must be Mu Qianfan who had returned. He exclaimed, You! Get off me quickly. Don't touch me. However, Mu Qianfan not only didn't get off but instead held He even tighter, continuing to call her name. He had drunk a bit too much today, and was almost left at the hotel again. Out of consideration for his status as a married man, he insisted on having Lin Shujia bring him back. Realizing it was him, she said nothing more. Mu Qianfan's sobriety didn't last long. His mind quickly became muddled and chaotic again, so he curled up on the living room sofa and fell asleep, sleeping very uncomfortably. She reached out a hand to his forehead. Fortunately, he didn't have a fever. Only then did she slightly relax, guessing his poor complexion might be, because he hadn't slept well last night. So, she thought of letting him sleep a bit longer. She went in, got a blanket, and came out to cover him with it. Unexpectedly, this movement woke Mu Qianfan. He suddenly opened his eyes, startling He greatly. She quickly straightened up. Waking up, Mu Qianfan hadn't yet recalled what happened last night. Rubbing his head, splitting from a hangover, he asked He confused, Why am I here? He turned and walked away, leaving him with her back. It wasn't that she was angry about last night. She just hadn't figured out how to answer him. Should she tell him he'd been out of control while drunk? Mu Qianfan stared blankly at Hugh's back, sat up, and tried hard to remember last night's events. While he had certainly drunk a lot, he hadn't completely blacked out. The thought of his primal outburst made him freeze. How could he do such a thing? The relationship they'd worked so hard to build was now completely ruined. Mu Qianfan quickly went to the bedroom, apologizing sincerely. Hugh, I'm sorry. I drank too much last night. I truly didn't mean to violate you. I know, it was just the alcohol. It was precisely because there was only release, not emotion, under the influence of alcohol that Hugh didn't want to accept him at that moment. Hugh? Hugh wasn't angry, but Mu Qianfan was at a loss, unsure if her reaction was because she believed him or because she was so disappointed she'd given up on him. Try to drink less in the future. It's not good for your health. Seeing Mu Qianfan so nervous, as if very worried, Hugh offered a word of comfort. It's time to go to work. You aren't angry with me? Mu Qianfan asked cautiously. After so many years, this was his most humble moment, for he had done something contemptible. I hope there won't be a next time. No matter when, Hugh never wanted to be pressed beneath a drunk's body for pleasure. That was disrespect towards her. Okay. Mu Qianfan didn't know whether to be happy or sad. Seeing Hugh clearly didn't want to continue the topic, he merely fell silent and went to the bathroom to shower. After what happened last night, he had just collapsed into sleep, without even having time to shower. Now he felt uncomfortable all over. By the time Mu Qianfan came out of the bathroom, Aunt Lin had already delivered and set out breakfast. Hugh was sitting at the dining table waiting for him. They always ate breakfast together. Hugh genuinely wasn't bothered by last night's events. After all, nothing really happened. To argue with a drunk person was just inviting unpleasantness for herself. But Mu Qianfan didn't know her true thoughts. He was still worried if she was silently sulking, or if she was so disappointed that she had given up on him, or if she simply didn't care about him at all. It wasn't that he didn't want to clear things up, but if Hugh didn't want to discuss it, he couldn't bring it up again. After all, it wasn't a pleasant topic. This left him to guess on his own, yet he couldn't figure it out. After breakfast, they each went to work. At the company, seeing Wen-jin, Mu Qianfan originally wanted to ask her, if a man, while drunk, forced himself on her, even if it didn't succeed, would she be angry? But then, he thought better of it. Lin Shujia had sent him home last night, knowing he was drunk. If he asked Wen-jin that, they would definitely figure it out, and then last night's events would be exposed. He believed he wouldn't want their true relationship to be revealed, would she? And he certainly didn't want others to know about such a disgraceful thing last night. Perhaps because he was too worried about last night's events, or perhaps because of the discomfort of his hangover headache, Mu Qianfan looked unwell all day, and his spirits were low. When Jean asked Mu Qianfan, concerned, "Young master, are you feeling unwell? Do you want to see a doctor?" Mu Qianfan shook his head. "No, I'm fine. I drank too much last night, and didn't sleep well." Lin Shujia chuckled. The young master has been so happy these past 2 days, seeing the eldest young master. Mu Qianfan wouldn't meet with ordinary people at all, let alone socialize, only because his cousin Mu Qianyu was visiting this time, which was why he came home so late last night. He had originally planned to introduce them once he truly wanted to be with him, rather than just reluctantly cohabiting because of the marriage certificate. Now, that was all over. However, Mu Qianyu had gone to Jinghai. With him in charge of affairs there, Mu Qianfan could rest assured and stay in Linjiang with his dear wife, and also accompany her to the imperial capital. As long as he didn't proactively suggest divorce, he still had a chance to win her heart. And even if she truly left him, he wouldn't easily give her up. Although Hugh decided not to dwell on it with Mu Qianfan, such an incident inevitably caused awkwardness. Especially when they were alone. Anything they said felt strange. So, after coming home from work, one hid in the study, the other in the home office. Even when it was time to sleep, Mu Qianfan chose to sleep on the sofa in the living room. He never expected that on their first night of marriage, when they were strangers, he hadn't slept in the living room. Now, as an old married couple, he was sleeping on the sofa. What kind of situation was this? What a failure he was. He also hadn't expected Mu Qianfan to care so much about last night's events, going to sleep on the sofa again. She wanted to call him in, but couldn't bring herself to. She was still too reserved. Fortunately, the blanket she had given Mu Qianfan that morning was still on the sofa, so she didn't have to worry about him catching a cold without anything to cover himself tonight. But she didn't know how many days he would sleep in the living room. The next day, he woke up before Mu Qianfan again. Seeing him curled up so pitifully on the sofa in the living room, she hesitated but decided to be a bit bolder. Hearing he was up, Mu Qianfan quickly got up to wash. He only felt sore all over, thinking this was likely due to sleeping on the sofa, where he couldn't stretch out properly. Mu Qianfan had no appetite, and breakfast tasted bland. Seeing his pale face, He said to him, "What happened that night is over. You don't actually need to sleep in the living room." Mu Qianfan looked at Hugh in surprise. "Aren't you afraid of me?" That night he had almost forced himself on her. Now, remembering it, he still felt worse than a beast. He shook her head. I trust you. If you truly wanted to do something to me, you wouldn't have waited until that night. Besides, as long as I'm sober, I am willing. Hiyu's voice grew softer and softer, almost inaudible by the end, and her face was red to the roots of her ears. If it weren't for the special circumstances, she wouldn't have said such a thing even if it killed her. When it came to romance, Hiyu wasn't just low on emotional intelligence, she practically had a psychological barrier. This was a sickness that needed treatment. Mu Qianfan's eyes widened as he looked at Hiyu in disbelief. Really? Hiyu lowered her head, softly assenting. Hmm. They were a lawful couple. This was something Hiyu should have done long ago. Through that night, she also sensed Mu Qianfan's suppressed feelings and his deep regard for her. Mu Qianfan was ecstatic, his efforts hadn't been in vain. Hiyu finally acknowledged his status as her husband, and she was willing to give herself to him, as he wished. Hiyu, having spoken her true feelings, was terribly embarrassed, feeling as if she was sitting on pins and needles in front of Mu Qianfan. She had no mind for breakfast, hastily ate a few bites, and then awkwardly stood up. She quietly mumbled, I'm full. I'll go to work first. You take your time eating. Mu Qianfan also stood up, quickly walked over, grabbed Hiyu's hand, and with a slight pull, drew her into his embrace, gazing at her intently. Hiyu's heart jolted with alarm, and she wanted to struggle, but then a shadow enveloped her. Mu Qianfan's handsome and familiar face suddenly drew near, infinitely magnified before her. She instinctively recoiled, but Mu Qianfan followed, leaning forward. Fearing she might fall, he even thoughtfully placed a hand on her waist. The scene looked utterly beautiful. Mu Qianfan was practically on top of Hiyu's lips. She thought he was going to kiss her, just like the night before, so she hesitated, wondering whether to accept or push him away. However, he didn't kiss her. He simply said to her, as if making a promise, Hiyu, in this life, I acknowledge only you. There were no other women before you, and there will never be another woman after you. This was Mu Qianfan's confession, and also his promise to her. There's a saying I don't know if you still remember, but I've always kept it in my heart. Mu Qianfan continued, Hiyu, I'll be responsible for the rest of your life, and I will fulfill your happiness. Mr. Mu, Hiyu admitted she truly didn't understand the man before her at all. His actions always defied her expectations, delivering pleasant surprises. How could she know that she felt surprised only because she had never expected anything like unwavering and steadfast love, or a man who loved her deeply? Mu Qianfan hugged Hiyu tightly, expressing his feelings word by word. Hiyu, I like you. Hiyu was completely stunned, staring blankly at Mu Qianfan, her mouth slightly agape, but unable to utter a single word. This was a real kiss, with both of them sober. After the long kiss, Hiyu's lips were a little red and swollen. Blushing furiously, she couldn't speak, merely leaning in Mu Qianfan's arms, looking up at him shyly. This was her man. Though his status couldn't compare to Li Junyi's, his goodness, his sense of security and warmth were unique to her, second only to her grandmother. Mu Qianfan's gaze. Promise me, if I do anything wrong, you must tell me immediately. I can change, but please don't leave easily. He was almost burned by Mu Qianfan's gaze, and she softly agreed without hesitation. Okay. Mu Qianfan smiled in satisfaction, lowering his head to lean towards Hiyu again, scaring her into wanting to retreat. Her mouth was now sore and numb. She couldn't kiss anymore, or she wouldn't be able to face anyone. Unexpectedly, although Mu Qianfan did kiss her again, he didn't kiss her lips, but instead planted a kiss on her forehead. Hiyu, I'm so happy today. Thank you for accepting me. How could Hiyu not be happy? Without any searching, heaven had bestowed upon her such a wonderful man. Perhaps this was heaven's compensation to her. The door suddenly opened. Aunt Lin, as usual, came to clear their dining table and clean the room, but when she opened the door, she saw two people embracing. They were still here today, and she had disturbed their private moment, but it wasn't her fault, was it? She came on time. It was they who hadn't left on time. She didn't know. Aunt Lin froze, hastily closing the door, silently praying in her heart that Mr. Mu wouldn't fire her. The moment the door opened, Hiyu frantically escaped from Mu Qianfan's embrace. Her already red face turned even redder, feeling as if she'd been caught doing something wrong. Although they weren't doing anything wrong, but rather something lawful between a husband and wife, she just wasn't used to it. This was a sickness, and only Mr. Mu could cure it. Since they had separated, Mu Qianfan didn't continue. Seeing Aunt Lin approach, he knew it was time to go to work. He wasn't a man solely preoccupied with romance. Afterwards, Hiyu and Mu Qianfan each went to work. Jarn was just a small design company, but Mu Qianfan had endless meetings every day. It was truly inconvenient for him to go to Jaren to work, so the best solution was to move Jaren closer. After this breakthrough development with Hiyu today, he wanted to be with her even more, to prevent certain people, like Yang Yi, from taking advantage. So, as soon as he arrived at the company, he asked Lin Shujia, "How are the arrangements for Jaren's relocation coming along?" Lin Shujia was always smiling. "Almost done. With just a word from young master, it can be moved anytime." Mu Qianfan didn't want to wait a moment longer. "Then let's do it this weekend." When Jean silently grumbled to himself, "Young master is in such a hurry because of young madam, isn't he?" Surveillance footage wasn't enough for him. He had to bring her closer. And why not? Everything was available at the media company. Mu Qianfan's office came with a study, bedroom, dining room, bathroom, and even a kitchen. Of course, this was more convenient. Thinking of Hiyu's words and her demeanor this morning, Mu Qianfan was in an exceptionally good mood, wishing he could get off work immediately and go home, hold her, and savor her. He wanted Hiyu not because he had suppressed his desires for too long, but because he wanted to possess her completely. Intimacy was not only the sublimation of love but also capable of bringing them children. If they had adorable children, Hiyu would be even less likely to leave him, wouldn't she? They say joy brings good spirits, but despite such great joy today, Mu Qianfan's spirits weren't good. His complexion was even worse than yesterday. When Jean asked Mu Qianfan with concern, "Young master, did you drink again last night? Your face looks terrible." Mu Qianfan raised a hand to rub his temples. "No, I didn't sleep well last night." Lin Shujia chuckled mischievously. "Young master, health is the capital of revolution. That thing still needs to be controlled. It's easy to damage the kidneys, and that's not good." When Jean hung his head, embarrassed to look at Lin Shujia. Not only could he say such things, but he was probably the only one who dared to. He had always been so fearless. Mu Qianfan gave Lin Shujia a cold sidelong glance. "Are you very idle lately? Then do you want to go help Jinghai? He happens to be short-staffed over there." Lin Shujia shook his head repeatedly. "Not idle. I'm not idle at all. Young master isn't working overtime now, so I'm practically swamped. I'll go get busy now. Young master, please forget about me." "Are you very idle too? Since Ajia doesn't want to go to Jinghai, you go then. You're more familiar with things there anyway." Mu Qianfan would never admit this was a threat. When Jean, they all couldn't do anything with young master. It seemed they could only ask Uncle Da to step in. He alone was worth both of them. At noon, Mu Qianfan went to the Dragon Phoenix restaurant again to have lunch with Hiyu. Her residence was a bit far from Star Moon, so coming over wasn't very convenient, which was why he wanted to move her to Star Moon as soon as possible. After a morning of calming down, Hiyu's mood had long since returned to normal. However, upon seeing Mu Qianfan, her heart still couldn't help but quicken, and she remembered the kiss. That morning was the least serious she had ever been at work. Her mind was constantly on Mu Qianfan, thinking about the little details of married life, and then she realized she seemed to have fallen for him. Everything Mu Qianfan had done for her, although not what she had always dreamed of, showed her his sincerity. If he didn't see her as his wife and didn't intend to spend his life with her, there would be no need for him to do any of it. Thinking about her own actions, she felt deeply ashamed. It wasn't too late to make amends now. She had to treat this man well and manage their marriage properly. So, she made a difficult but important decision to try and open up to Mu Qianfan. Mu Qianfan's gaze at He was different from usual, and he apologized. "Did I scare you this morning? I'm sorry, I was too hasty." He was actually just unable to control his emotions. He awkwardly tugged at the corner of her mouth. "It's fine, you don't need to worry about it." It was indeed fine. She had quite liked the feeling that morning, but she was too shy to say such things. To avoid awkwardness, He kept her head down and ate. Only after she was full did she belatedly realize that Mu Qianfan hadn't really touched his chopsticks, just staring at her. She quietly asked, "Why aren't you eating? Is it not to your taste?" Mu Qianfan smiled and shook his head. "No, watching you eat, I find it more meaningful." He suddenly blurted out, "Are you trying to say that watching me eat fills you up? Because I've disgusted you?" "No, that's not what I mean." Mu Qianfan had a severe headache and no appetite to eat, but he hadn't expected Hiyu to say something like that, which truly startled him. Hiyu pursed her lips and smiled. "Just kidding, don't take it seriously." She felt the atmosphere at the table was eerily silent and wanted to lighten it, but unexpectedly, Mu Qianfan took her seriously. She understood this man's way of thinking less and less. Wasn't he very smart? How could he not even distinguish a joke? Was it because concern blurs judgment? Mu Qianfan secretly breathed a sigh of relief. That's good. He truly had been startled just now because he had never imagined he would crack a joke. It was terrifyingly surprising, a sort of surprise for him, though it was a scare with no pleasant joy. He felt embarrassed under Mu Qianfan's gaze and quickly tried to divert his attention. I'm full. Aren't you going to eat? Mu Qianfan looked at Hiyu's expectant little eyes and could only smile. I'll eat now. Hiyu, rarely enthusiastic, even proactively dished some food onto Mu Qianfan's plate, guessing he would like it because she had always observed what he ate each time. Normally, didn't he eat more of what he liked? Don't assume she only focused on her own eating each time. She was actually secretly observing him. She had a fair understanding of some of his preferences. For example, he didn't eat spicy food, liked sweets, and his clothes were always black, white, or gray. If things continued this way, perhaps in the near future, she would be choosing his clothes and tying his tie for him every morning, then leaving the house together with him. Despite his lack of appetite, Mu Qianfan still made an effort to eat the food he had put on his plate. However, not long after finishing, he went to the restroom and threw it all up. He felt increasingly unwell, his head heavy, his feet light, and his whole body weak. When he returned after throwing up, his complexion was even worse. He finally noticed something was wrong and asked him with concern, are you not feeling well? Mu Qianfan raised a hand to rub his head, a hint of pain in his eyes. Just a bit of a headache. Hiyu's heart suddenly tightened. Are you sick? Do you want to see a doctor? Mu Qianfan had slept in the living room for 2 consecutive nights, and the night before last, he didn't even have a blanket. She worried he had caught a cold. As she spoke, she stood up and reached out to touch his forehead. The moment her palm rested on Mu Qianfan's forehead, his heart couldn't help but tremble slightly. She usually disliked physical contact, yet now she was so proactive. Mu Qianfan smiled contentedly, took Hiyu's hand, and gently kissed the back of it. I'm fine, don't worry. Hiyu frowned. You have a fever. Sure enough, he had caught a cold. It was all her fault for being too reserved, not thick-skinned enough. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gotten sick at all. Do I? Mu Qianfan raised a hand skeptically to touch his own forehead. It's not hot at all. Hiyu was a bit speechless. Your hand is as hot as your forehead. How could you possibly tell? Besides, could I be lying to you? Mu Qianfan sheepishly withdrew his hand. Oh, even so, it's nothing, just a fever, probably a cold. It felt a bit cold when I slept the night before last. Hiyu's face darkened. It's so hot. How can it be nothing? Aren't you afraid of getting burned into an idiot? Mu Qianfan pursed his lips and smiled, feeling truly good that she was concerned about him. I have a very important meeting this afternoon. If I still feel unwell after the meeting, I'll go to the hospital. He looked at Mu Qianfan suspiciously. Really? Mu Qianfan smiled and retorted. When have I ever lied to you? He felt that Mu Qianfan was an adult who knew how to handle things, and a cold wasn't a major illness. If she insisted further, it would seem like she was making a mountain out of a molehill. So, that's how it was decided. She respected Mu Qianfan's opinion. After the meal, both returned to their respective companies. At 3 p.m., Mu Qianfan began his meeting. This was a very important high-level meeting concerning the development in Jinghai, and Mu Qianfan had been preparing for it for a long time. So, even though he felt increasingly unwell during the meeting, his head throbbing, alternating between hot and cold, and even going out to vomit once, he still persisted. Wen Jin saw his complexion getting worse and worse, and wanted to pause the meeting, but he stopped her. She then had to remind Lin Shujia to speed up the meeting process and end it early. Lin Shujia and Wen Jin sat to Mu Qianfan's right and left, respectively, the people closest to him. Although Lin Shujia usually seemed unreliable, he was actually very dependable. He had already noticed Mu Qianfan's unusual state and understood him, knowing he wouldn't abandon or pause the meeting, so he was already accelerating the meeting's progress. But meetings couldn't be rushed just because he wanted them to be. Everything that needed to be said still had to be said. A meeting originally scheduled for 3 hours wasn't that easy to conclude. Finally, with the joint efforts of Wen Jin and Lin Shujia, the meeting concluded half an hour early, and Mu Qianfan had held on to his very limit. Watching the people in the conference room disperse one by one until only he, Wen Jin, and Lin Shujia remained, he finally relaxed, dropping his cool and aloof facade to reveal his fatigue. Take me to the hospital? With that last sentence, Mu Qianfan fainted. Young master? Wen Jin and Lin Shujia cried out in alarm. They hadn't realized his condition was already so serious.